David,
Hi everyone, welcome to Core Unit Rituals number 1. Yeah, today we're going to have one of the sessions that hopefully will what we're trying to do with SES, with Sustainable Ecosystem Scaling, is to help other core units. I think my internet's breaking up, right?
Can still hear you though.
We can still hear it. It's all good.
Okay, so as I was saying, what we're trying to do as a part of our mandate is to help other core units scale, and one of them is helping them facilitate these different meetings and rituals that we believe that they lead to a healthier and more productive working environment. So today we're going to be visiting the OKRs, which is a very extremely interesting and useful tool, as Andy will tell us more. And yeah, just to set the expectations, we're not expecting everyone to fix their OKRs in this call, but more to have an introduction, and hopefully you can see the value, and if we need more, we can ask Andy to help us more in this journey. So Andy, without further ado.
Yes. Thanks, Juan. Welcome everyone to the Launchpad sessions. This is going to be about OKRs. My name is Andy, and I'm the agile / business coaching guy in SES, Sustainable Ecosystem Scaling Core Units. And I'm going to tell you a bit about OKRs today, and hopefully we can run a short exercise where you will be trying to set up your own objectives and key results. But first, I'm gonna, even before I share my screen, set my timer to 30 minutes so that we value our time. And then I'm gonna start sharing my screen and we'll go into the presentation. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
All right.
That's good.
Okay. Results in the ecosystem.
Did it break for everyone, or because
For everybody, yeah.
Okay, my internet's been not great these last days, so I thought it was me for a second.
So I guess straight to the workshop it is.
Yeah, that was I hope that was enough content to get us started. Any questions?
What does OKR stand for? No, I'm just joking.
Number go up.
Occur.
Welcome back, Andy.
Seems like everyone's having internet connection today. Issues. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry for that. I just changed to an alternative network, having problems. All right, so the short history of OKRs, starting with Peter Drucker. Maybe you heard about this guy, because before OKRs were born, actually there were MBOs everywhere, especially in the enterprise world. So what happened in mid-50s is this guy called Peter Drucker, who is actually the father of modern management, has devised something called management by objectives, which means that if we want to run a company and if we want to track progress of our company, we should probably define a couple of objectives for ourselves that we can track, that we can set up, that we can review. And based on that, we can hopefully have a company that is actually going in the right direction. And then in the 60s, late 60s, things changed a bit because the guy called Andy Grove founded Intel. And the OKRs we are talking about were actually born in Intel, something between 68 and 74. 74 is actually an important date because John Doerr, he joined Intel, and this is the guy who said MBOs are not actually working the way they're supposed to. They're putting a bit too much pressure on connecting the objectives themselves with incentives. People are not that well motivated to work on them, to complete them. So he started something he called the objectives and key results, and they were successfully implemented in Google in 1999, and Google's been working with OKRs ever since. And this is at the moment the most important way to track progress, to set objectives for most companies these days. And I'm going to tell you more about what these OKRs are and how we can use them. I'm getting messages about people wanting to enter the room actually a lot. Okay, so starting with definitions, objectives and key results. So the objective is the end goal, something we want to achieve. And I think the best parallel for what an objective is a direction, rather than a very clear moment in time or a very clear milestone in the timeline. It's actually an inspirational and blurry direction that shows the direction we're going in. And the key results are the milestones we want to reach that we're going to use to see if we're actually getting there, if we're moving into the right direction. So while the objective is supposed to be inspirational and blurry, the key result, on the other hand, is supposed to be usually measurable, which means that there needs to be as many concrete measures as possible in the key result itself. Otherwise, we're not really sure whether we're getting there or not. So the red squares here, they are the key results. The objective is the end game, or where we're getting, the clear direction, the horizon. So the cycle for OKRs is quite similar to, maybe you have heard of, the PDCA cycle. And that's again something that was invented by no one else but a guy called Deming, who was advising Japanese companies, amongst other things, on how to run or how to track their progress and getting there, including Toyota, the company where, for example, Agile was born. So the guy was spending years in Japan, and among other really useful things, he created something called the Plan, Do, Check, Act wheel, which basically says that we first plan, then we do what we planned, then we checked how it went, we adapt, and then we start the circle again. So there's not a big difference with OKRs. We actually define the objective, we define the key results for the objective, and then we do all the actions that need to be carried out to meet that, to meet the key result, so we know whether the objective is, we're getting closer or not. And the insight is actually the retrospective, which means that we review all the way how we were going toward the direction, and we're trying to measure what needs to get maybe fixed, maybe adjusted. So we're basically learning on the way. That's what the OKRs are supposed to do. And the things that are really important to remember about them is that they are made to help people self-develop while moving the company towards its business objectives. So they're usually quarterly or denser. That means that we do not set them for a year, we do not set them for 2 years, for 3 years. That's basically a strategic horizon, sort of like a vision. And I'm going to talk more about vision and mission on the next slide. But why they are so dense is because more and more things are changing around us. So the market is changing, the customers are changing, the people that we're working with are changing, our products are changing, the needs are changing, everything is changing. So the if we set goals for ourselves once in a year or once in 2 years, it might actually turn out that we cannot really fulfill those goals. We cannot complete them because everything has changed around us. So you can see a lot of agile approach here, and that's true. OKRs are actually very agile. The other thing is that they're publicly visible. So it's with MBOs, for example, so the predecessor to OKRs, we would actually lock ourselves up in a meeting room. So my first line manager and myself, I would lock myself up in the room. We would talk about objectives. I would say, yes, okay, let's do it. And then nobody else would ever know what the objectives were. That was the case with MBOs. With OKRs, it's important that people know what other people's teams' objectives are so that they can better perform their own work. So they are more informed on how the company is behaving as a whole. It's very important. And they are mostly brainstormed collectively, which means that we all try to brainstorm on our objectives. So that there's sort of like a democratic agreement in the team or in the organization that, hey, this is the direction we're going to move into, because as the systems theory has it, only the whole system knows what's the best for the system, not the boss that wakes up in 4 a.m. in the morning and has a vision of what should happen to the company. That is no longer the case. We all have an impact, and we all should influence how the objectives are created for the company. And also they're detached from bonuses. I'm going to talk about it more in the next slide because there are lots of questions about it usually. And the OKRs are not supposed to be reached 100%, because if we reach our goals 100%, that's what John Doerr already found out very early on at Intel, is that they were not challenging enough. So we would basically be sandbagging, saying, hey, I did all my goals. No, you should actually do 60 to 70% completion rate for your metrics, for your key results, and for your objectives. They are also reviewed. That's the retrospective part I was talking about, and can and should be adjusted as we learn. So if we learn early on in the quarter that an objective cannot be completed or should not be completed, we should not complete it. And if we have another objective that came up because that other one is no longer valid, we should also put it and edit as we go. It's not about checking things off the list. It's more about learning and taking wise, learned decisions as we go. So more about the objectives and incentives trap, because there's a notion, and I think it's been around for many, many decades, that if we motivate people with incentives, linking them to objectives, they're going to be more effective and the company is going to be more successful, which is no longer the case, because as you can see, that's how our brains work, by the way. So it's not, it's just that, nothing else. We just started to analyze how the brain works when something is linked to incentives, and that means in the end, most of the time, money and promotions. So money and power. So the incentives have a tendency to become objectives, and then we are not supposed to fail in front of ourselves, in front of our people. If the objective is linked to incentives, then we are basically trying to blur the picture so that it looks like we're actually attaining the goal. And because it sort of starts a rat race, it's always has this huge potential of destroying the social fabric. So we can actually cause conflicts by doing that. And there's a very nice article that I link below from Harvard Business Review, and I underscored 1993 here because we already knew then that something is wrong, and that's an article about why incentive plans cannot work, because people are not competitive by default. People are collaborative by default, just like the rest of nature. But there is this this really widespread notion that we are competitive by nature. We are not. And other two things, people will try to game the system if we link objectives to incentives, and people will try to reach the goals no matter what, even if it means they will ruin the company. Many times this is exactly what happens. So why do we do OKRs? Because we want to set goals that are aspirational, that are motivating, that are inspiring to our individual self-development. So that's what they are offering on an individual basis, not telling you that, hey, this is your goal because this is the goal of the company. No, we need to develop, we need to have progress as a company, and you need to develop and have progress as an individual. And only then you have sustainable culture in the company that allows people to do what they love while checking off the goals from the company business roadmap. So how to implement OKRs? They're actually very simple, but the incubation phase for OKRs is something that tend to scare people off a bit, because there's a lot of brainstorming in that, because we need to actually find out, starting from the vision and mission of the company, we need to find out what's the overarching theme. So we need to define our identity in a way, and that's not very easy many times. So I have used my own example of one of my past companies, the remote work consultancy business. And the vision for the company was just that, to become #1 company. And the mission is what the company is actually doing. When it's successful, what sort of activities will it be doing in the ecosystem, whatever ecosystem it is. In this case, that would be educating companies, helping them moving to remote work. And then if we have that, we can actually start creating OKRs, and that should always be a collective process when we're actually trying to find out what directions the company, the organization will be moving into. So in the case of my previous company, that would be visibility in the enterprise world, which means that we get more and more spotted by huge companies, by enterprises. And then if you see here in the objective, there are no numbers, but they start to appear in the key results. So the 4 bullet points here, they are the key results. And I have boldened the words that are actually adding to the measurability of each of these key results. So small, large, 50%, 3 times, high profile as opposed to low profile. 5 webinars, minimum of 50 corporate attendance, and then 2 conferences and 100 users monthly. This is very important, because if we do not attach clearly measurable values here, it will be extremely difficult while reviewing those key results. It will be very difficult to say whether we're getting there or not, because whatever is not clearly defined is open to redefining, to interpretation, to translation, whatever you call it, and we all do it differently. So that's why attaching numbers is really important. And then in this slide, I'm actually talking about organization-wide OKRs, because that's, I think, what matters most at this point in our ecosystem, is to set up sturdy and sustainable objectives at the organization level. But of course, you could, and a lot of companies do that, you could go deeper. And then if I'm talking in the company-wide objectives about running webinars, for example, 5 webinars with 50 corporate attendance, I could assign a team or an individual, depending on your structure, a sort of breakdown to that key result. So we are coming up with a new objective for, let's say, an individual, that is working only with webinars. And we break that down, still remembering that we need as many measurable values in those key results as possible. And also a document can be a measurable point of measure, right? If we just say, let's create or let's conceptualize a new strategy, that does not mean much. That can be done inside somebody's head, essentially. But what we are expecting is that somebody actually documents the strategy and puts it somewhere. So it's better if it's detailed and if it leaves no room for interpretation. Now, this third step is to review the OKRs, and that's usually done midterm and at the end of term. So for example, 3 months term. And then we're attaching scores. Again, I imagine at the beginning, when the company is still small, everybody's working together, I would imagine that we would need a session or maybe a review session where we're actually publicly attaching points to our key results. So then, as Google says, if it's 1, because it's always scaled from 0 to 1, and if we attach 1, it means we are probably sandbagging and we could have set more challenging goals. And usually we would get something between 0.4 and 0.7. So we would have done most of the key result that we have set for ourselves, or maybe a bit less. But the thing here is not to be afraid to say, I couldn't reach my goals, right? If they were then linked to incentives, I would be very reluctant to say I'm actually failing to complete my goals. I will be trying to come up with all sorts of vanity metrics that show that we're actually attaining the goal while we're not in reality. And that happens in probably more than half of the companies still in the world. And so not being afraid, coming up with the actual results is very important in this framework and is actually invited. In the Maker ecosystem, OKRs are quite important because they help us track project progress in a way that is actually consistent. So you could come up with all different sorts of defining goals and priorities and objectives and measures and so on. But it is always best to have one framework to do that, so that we can, when we need to, we can also compare different core units between one another based on their OKRs. Not to mention that OKRs are important when talking to governance. It's in this two-way communication when we are trying to have a budget assigned, for example, which is also important when we're talking about the incubation process, which our core unit is actually working on as one of the research projects. And there, the main framework for tracking progress will also be OKRs. That's why they are important. That's why it's good to catch up with them as soon as possible. And so I have a small exercise for you. And okay, I'm actually ahead of time. I'm having a small group exercise at the moment, which is about brainstorming in pairs. But as I see, Zoom doesn't let me split everyone into exactly pairs. That could be 2 or 3 people. So I'm going to send you a link in a moment in chat. And in this link, if you open it, you will go to Mural. Mural is a piece of software that lets you work on a whiteboard in real time. And I have prepared a small board for you. I'm going to quickly give you an intro to the board. So, and you will get split into groups using Zoom breakout room feature. Yeah, so that's that. Okay, at this point, I will take questions at the end, so we'll have the last 15 minutes for Q&As. But are there like super critical questions at this point that I can answer? Okay. Before
I guess.
the link.
Yeah, so I guess one question I had, so you talked a little bit about the importance of setting OKRs organization-wide and then also having a common framework for like OKRs within individual core units, right? I guess my question is, like certain core units, like there's differences in what the OKRs would look like, and certain core units might not necessarily really. What am I trying to ask? Sorry. I guess I'm just trying to understand like what would be the unifying framework if it's not just their general idea of OKRs.
Okay, that's a good question. And I think that's a question that can spur a lot of debate. So I will try to answer it later on after the exercise, but I will note it and keep it in mind, okay? So let's do this. I'm gonna send you a link to the board. Worst case scenario, you're just gonna play around on the board. But I think you're gonna like it actually. Okay. You can see the board right now, and I'm gonna send the link to the chat. You should be able to enter that board. Yep, I can see people entering. You can zoom in and zoom out with a pinch as much as you need so that you can actually do a lot of different things on the board. And those who hasn't entered and has no intention to do so, you can see a lot of actually pointers on the screen. That's always the fun part. Okay, so the thing about the exercise is to choose, I will now break, okay, let's do the breaking out. But then I cannot talk to you, so I'll just briefly go through the board and then I'll do the breaking down. So I can see that people are already stealing some icons and moving them around the board, which is expected behavior. So once you're in a breakout room with somebody else, one or two other people, please choose the theme. There are 4 themes today: starting a new business, moving to a new apartment, colonizing Mars, or something else, something you can think of. And please use the big stickies to put, first claim your group. So move the icon to the group that you'll be working in so that 2 groups don't work on the same set of cards, destroying things for each other. So first do that, and then put objectives in the big card, and then put key results in small stickies beneath it. Within the theme that you have chosen. So with starting a new business, what objectives can you think of? We have 1 to 3 big cards and then some small cards to put the key results in there. So just try to think about it. Let's have like 15 minutes to finish this exercise. You might come with some interesting ideas, and I'd like all the groups then to come up and speak about what objectives and key results they have created in the team they have selected. On the left, you have a small cheat sheet, maybe will help. And now I will break you into, let me see, I will break you into 8 rooms. And that's happening now. We're meeting again 15 minutes from now. So press create.
You're unassigned, Andy.
You're still here?
I don't even know how to go. I thought the Zoom was going to push me.
No, you stayed in this room, and we're actually staying in this room. This is the room created. I think maybe Zoom had a problem. putting us in another room. Could be. I'm testing the feature. But anyway,
I got kicked out.
Don't know where I
how
am.
does that happen? I've never seen that. Okay, let's
Tadeo,
head
yeah, I think you were with Tadeo and David based on assigned to room 1.
people are moving icons around. I'll stop sharing for a moment. It doesn't make sense. So it's me, Pavel, and Juan in one room. So what we should do is that we should actually, if we're part
No. Pavel went. This is the second connection. Check room number 1. Like he went with Tadeo and David. This is like his ghost connection.
I can go to that room actually. It lets me to.
To which room?
I can go to any of the rooms and see whether move to.
And did you want me to keep time or something?
I am keeping time.
Okay.
I am keeping time. I'm not sure if people know what to do.
You can broadcast to all rooms, so maybe write something saying like, hey, the objective is that you come back with A, B, and C. Or don't spend too much time on I don't know. You're the pro, man.
Okay. Okay, they're writing something good. It's always fun.
I managed to get kicked out of my breakout room accidentally. I accidentally hit X on Zoom.
Which
I don't
room
know.
was it? With whom
It
you
was the
were?
one with Powell and with I forgot. I'm blanking on his name, but Powell is in there, and a guy with the letter T. Tadeo.
Yeah, I need to find out how to move you. to that room.
I have a join breakout room.
That's room number 1, the one you're looking for.
Yeah. That, oops.
Mm,
Yeah.
right.
Same.
So, did you work with Pavel?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So for some reason you're swapped. No, like,
Yeah.
so I was moved to the Pavel's rooms, and I think you.
Oh, I'm being invited to join. Okay. Sweet. I'll
Ah.
see you later.
And what about me? Wrzuciłeś mnie z mojego pokoju.
Yeah.
So, okay, so who kicked me out from my room?
That wasn't me. I mean, the Zoom's gonna kick you out anyway, kick everyone out within like the 60 seconds. And that was 15 seconds ago, so probably people will start to appear in this room shortly.
So anyway, I was somebody joined our room, like someone else was kicked out from his room, and he joined our room. Then I was kicked out from my room, and then I was kicked out from the second room. So I don't know.
Oh, hello again.
Hello again. Yeah. People are
Right,
coming back.
hello.
Who has survived? Kicking out, being shuffled from one room to another.
Well,
Nice
Great
job.
fun.
we got to Mars, but Eli pointed out that we didn't really plan very well to get back.
No one is.
It's okay. You can use our spaceport to go to and from.
Sweet. Teamwork.
Yep. Okay. Welcome
We
back.
don't need to get back because we're terraforming Mars. So we're staying there.
Welcome back. We're gonna take a look at the board, and I'm gonna ask maybe one person from each group to present what you've created, and I'm gonna go through all the groups. So let's see what's there. Let's have a timer set for maybe 5 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. Okay. Good. Group number one. Who chose starting a new business in group number one? And who can talk for the group? Please present.
You want to do it? Yeah, I can present for the group.
Go ahead.
Should I maybe pause the recording?
Maybe.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, so our first objective in starting a business is to write a business plan. The key result is to produce a white paper in a Times New Roman font, size 12, that includes fake science, a -1 knowledge proof, not even 0, we're going -1, and a built-in plan to rebrand the shitcoin once everything goes to hell. Objective number 2 is to devise a pump and dump scheme. Key results are to have tweet storms, telling everybody when to get in and out. We'll have a yield farm set up, fake endorsements from Vitalik, and getting wrecked eventually. And our last objective is to issue a shitcoin. The key results there are having a dumb name, adding additional coins for stable coins and governance, having a DAO, and getting listed on BitMEX.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a good group work here. Somebody should be recording this, or at least taking screenshots. I mean, this will stay with me.
Crypto 101.
Yeah. Okay, group number 2. Who's that?
So I could speak for our group. I kind of hijacked this group because I am in the middle of putting together a core unit, and this was the perfect theme because it's basically like starting a new business, right? And so, yeah, we started off with these 3 objectives. First one was to finish the initial setup, so solidifying roles, solidifying like your plan moving forward, like medium-term roadmap. And this was challenging because it was really hard to like make it measurable. So I guess like solidify the 4 roles of our initial plan, right? Or release one public roadmap document, right? So I guess like I didn't really understand whether OKRs are cool with like 0, 1 rather than like more like performance style metrics, but rather just is the task done or not. And then so the second objective was to expand the meeting minutes team to cover all substantial public calls. And so, yeah, we did produce consistent meeting minutes for 3 calls, and then exist 1 month with 0 missed summaries, train 2 new quality assurance people, and hire 2 contributors as scribes. So like those all contribute to that objective.
Okay,
And then the
good.
third,
Yeah, go ahead.
and then the third and final objective, which we didn't have a chance to add the granular bits, but yeah, create a comprehensive org chart and stakeholder registries. And this, yeah, we kind of ran out of time here.
Awesome, thank you. And yes, the answer to your question, OKRs, they accept binary metrics.
Okay.
So you can produce a document. You don't even have to say it's one document. You can produce a document that's
Okay.
still like a unit of something that can be measured if you produced it or not.
Got it. Yeah, and what was really interesting, actually, I just want to quickly mention this, is that I forgot who said it, but there was this idea that like OKRs are like the gamification of our jobs. Like we literally make one big quest into a number of sub quests. Yeah. So I got a pretty good kick out of Tadeo's comment on that. And then also we had an objective that we took out because it was too broad, and so I actually had it right there. Improve organizational infrastructure at MakerDAO. Like that sounds like a good objective, but the problem is that organizational infrastructure is just too broad a term, and it can mean so many things that yeah, it doesn't make sense as an objective. It makes sense, as my team pointed out to me, as a vision. So
Yep.
yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. That's also a very good point. And so whatever you're thinking of when you're thinking the next 3 months, usually when you set up OKRs, this is what you would be doing in the next 3 months. Like this is the work that's going to take 3 months to complete. Then you come up with objectives with a vision in mind, and that's what you've done. And then the key results. So it's all really good. Okay, future crypto utopia. That was in the theme of moving to a new apartment. So who's that, and who can present for the group?
Take it away, Long.
Sorry, what was that, Nick? I think you wanted to present this, right? You mentioned that earlier.
Did I kind of want to see you present it. I thought about it, and like I would love for
Nick, number go up. Nick, number go up.
I knew this was Nick's.
Yeah, not attaching myself to this one, Nick.
Okay, well, we all have this future crypto utopia, in our minds, and it's a little bit different for some of us than others, but Long, Juan and I, came together and we're like, well, what do you want in this place that we're going to move to? And you want a great location. You want to really enjoy where you're living. You would probably like it to be fairly tax friendly, right? And you want it to feel like home, right? It's you can't be living on some rando island somewhere in the middle of the Pacific. Like it's gotta feel like home. So as part of the great location, you want to be near a major airport. You want to probably be within 2 hours of skiing. You want to have some fine dining around you. So you want to have at least 4 Michelin star restaurants within 1 hour of driving.
Awesome.
You'd also like to have at least 1 garage, so your Lambo doesn't get stolen. It's you don't want your car to get keyed, stolen, and the like. So tax friendly, right? We want to probably have an effective tax rate of lower than 20%. That seems about fair, right? You're giving back to society, but you're not getting robbed because you're rich. You probably don't want to have any death taxes. So what you pass on to your children or your next of whatever. You probably don't want to be taxed on that again just for dying. You apparently, I didn't write this one, but you want to have you want to visit 5 potential tax havens before you choose your preferred one. And then the last one is feels like home, right? So you probably want a view, like at least a 7 out of 10 view. Must own at least 1 gun. Okay. Not within rocket firing distance. Very important. So place like Cyprus is not appropriate because you can be fired on from, Damascus and a couple other places. And you probably don't want to have a death penalty for drugs. So, no Singapore, no China, none of that. But someone was very adamant that death penalty is okay, just not for drugs.
Yep. Awesome. And then it feels like home, right? So a lot of numbers, a lot of measurable things here, and that's really, really important for anyone to just start working and completing that. And then when we're reviewing, we know what we're reviewing.
So we found out that the perfect place that applies to all of these is Zurich. So you should all come live with us in Zurich.
Good one, thank you. We have, I think, oh wow, we have 4 more, and it's already 7 p.m. my time. So whoever needs to run, feel free. I hope this exercise was useful, and if you weren't, and if you don't have to go yet, let's finish the presentations and then have a quick Q&A. And you're free to start your week. Okay. Then colonizing Mars. Who is group 1?
Okay, we go for it.
Yep.
So our objectives, the first objective is to achieve livable conditions for colonists. So the first key result is that we have to produce breathable air, and breathable air means that it has to have a proportion of 21% of oxygen and 78% of nitrogen, because in other rates, the gases are toxic. And we have to generate adequate temperature, something between 10 and 20 degrees Celsius could be suitable. Or we have to generate sufficient supply of food and water, at least for one crew for 1 month, and also resource extraction, figure it out before the colonists arrived. The second big objective is around like political organization, political sovereignty, self-determination. We don't want an extension of the nation-state structure in Mars. We need something sovereign and preferably like governed by a DAO, like a digital nation, an enclave, a digital enclave. And that is how we want to organize in Mars, in like accepted social rules. So we don't want any killings around, and so a peace treaty with an interplanetary council. And the third objective is super technology. Of course, we need technology. We need transport and rockets and sealed chambers, and we need renewable fuel sources and effective production and waste management, recycling, and these kind of things.
Thank you. Over to NASA. Okay. Group number 2, who is it? In colonizing Mars, who else picked it?
Okay, I'll go. So we want to build a objective. We want to build an alternative to Earth in case we blow it up. So it's kind of it's a plan B. We need to be ready. We want to build an economy for civilization and civilization growth and support. So it has to be like a nice place where there will be economic opportunity. And we want Mars to be the port of entry and exit to the solar system. So we wanted to have a very important place in the solar system. So the key results is that we want a GDP that will achieve 100 billion DAI. We want energy independence and transport system. So we don't want to have to import from Earth a lot of stuff. We need a sustainable population. So actually we want native Martians, 10% native Martians at least. So we need a good transportation system. People don't die twice a week, 100 persons per flight. Agricultural self-sustenance. We can feed a colony and a colony of 1,000 people. Has to be a net exporter, no trade imbalance. And we'll have achieved the full terraforming of Mars, so we'll be able to breathe oxygen freely. And someone just added low taxes, so yeah, low taxes as well.
Awesome, thank you. So what's left? We still have like the small objectives in group 3. So colonizing Mars was actually quite popular, I see. Who's group 3? Anyone from group number 3?
Yeah, I came in a little late into this group, but yeah, we were talking about getting usable resources and terraforming Mars and developing breathable atmosphere, complying with regulations of oxygen and nitrogen, ensuring there's at least 2 opposite sex individuals of each species of mammals. I found this gold lichen fungi that actually will grow on Mars and is theorized to be able to help the terraforming process, so have that growing everywhere. And then we thought about the fact that we might need a spaceship, and it has to have a flux capacitor so we can go at least 88 miles per hour, and training people so they can continue life on Mars.
Sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, again, lots of precise things. Now, group 4. Who is group 4?
I'll take this one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was a side objective, by the way. There's got to be a Dire and MKR flag, but didn't want to take up too much time with that. So we want to build a vehicle that transports lots of people to Mars, get the first expedition to Mars, and build a sustainable ecosystem on the planet. Those were kind of our objectives. So for the first one, we said, hey, we need to design a BFR with a payload capable of supporting 100 people. Seems pretty reasonable. We're going to test at least 5 different BFR stages to 100% success. We're going to source materials under budget. And then we're going to launch the rocket at least 3 times in a row without it exploding. So for getting the expedition to Mars, we want to design and test systems for quality of life, spending no more than 20% of payload on dietary needs. Going to land the rocket with all the people on Mars. Hire at least 20 rocket scientists who would be willing to go. I guess I probably should have started with that one. And as well as facilitate at least 20 crew-on-crew therapy sessions to prepare for the mission. And then finally, we want to send out some drones in advance. We're going to be mining Dogecoin for our stable currency. And we're going to be keeping some social norms in place. However, we think a week without murders is pretty reasonable. And finally, creating sustainable food sources for at least 1,500 kilocalories per person. So everyone's just kind of hungry.
Awesome. Thank you. I think we have done all the groups. Nobody chose something else. So I guess colonizing Mars 1 is awesome. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for this exercise, for joining me in this exercise. And now I learned also that I probably should have the QA session before the exercise so that we can answer a couple of questions while we're still recording. But now it's the moment to ask questions. And I think we already have, the chat's been very long. I'm wondering, Peyton, I think you had a question, or was it David?
David had a good question earlier.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so my question was about how do you create what is in a common framework across teams that have materially different style OKRs?
So can we think about an exemplary core units that have totally different OKRs? And
Sure. I have a perfect example, a real example. So for example, there is a content production core unit, and they are in a communication style core unit that's focused primarily on like marketing, content, brand image, mainly producing content, right? So that's their OKRs will look a lot like a marketing team's OKRs. So, get X amount of views, like it's a lot like whatever, X amount of views, that's one. Versus an organizational communications core unit that's not focused on like marketing or reach or like any big number per se in anything that we do. Instead, we're focused on the internal stakeholders and the internal organization and like the essential communications that happen.
Yeah.
So how would you, yeah.
Yeah, so you're entirely welcome to do so. We are not, and the OKRs are not trying to enforce similar objectives on teams. It's trying to enforce one framework. And the framework is the exercise that you've just done, which is to formulate the objectives so they're inspirational and they're somehow following the vision you have for the core unit or your team, and then produce key results that are easily measurable. That's all. Of course, some teams will have the objectives that go more in the within the lines of marketing objectives. The others would go more into internal stakeholder objectives, and that's entirely okay. And you're setting those objectives up for yourselves, right? The only thing is for us as SES, I think it's important when we are observing the ecosystem to see whether you're progressing on the way towards the goal that you have set for yourself. That's the only important thing. And that the key results are actually measurable enough for us to say, or be able to compare, maybe if it's possible, not always possible, but maybe if it's possible to compare those measures between different teams, not to really decide which core unit is performing better, because that's hardly comparable in any case I can think of, but to see whether they are actually progressing and the progress is properly measured towards the goal and objectives. That's it.
Thanks. That's a great answer. And
Just
I
to
was
add
also.
to the, oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
go for it.
Not going to add something that an OKR is it's important to remember that it's a communication tool, and communication in a DAO is more often than not quite chaotic. So this is a bit what we're trying to establish. It's an efficient communication tool. It shows very clearly what you're working on in a very tangible way. So that's.
Yeah. I guess my struggle was like, you know, when the public who's not in a core unit is looking at a core unit and says, hey, you know, like, is the core unit doing 1,000 views for their OKR versus produce one report? You know, the 1,000 views kind of feels like, oh, more credit. Like it feels like more like something is being done versus like OKRs that kind of seem like just regular operations rather than like a performance based goal or like something aspirational. I guess that's where my mind is like trying to reconcile things.
So it will depend a lot on your objective, right? If your objective is more making Maker known in the outside world, the impressions might make more sense. But if your objective is more internal, you cannot possibly get 1,000 people from governance to interact with you. So maybe you can go for a percentage, for example.
Exactly, it's a totally different function. Yeah, yeah, percentage. That's an interesting suggestion.
Please always remember that you are supposed to be, or you as a core unit, or the core unit members are supposed to be #1 beneficiary of the objectives and key results. So unlike it was often in the past, at least speaking from my own experience, I would do the objectives for the sake of my first line manager, right? I wouldn't do them necessarily because I feel like they are the right thing to do for me or in any way helping me and my department or my team develop, but because I was told to, right? And this is totally different. You're doing them, you're setting them up and you're trying to complete them because you know that's what your core unit needs. And if the goal, when you think of it, if the objective or the key results, they feel like, they're just, you know, like boring things that we need for I don't know, governance to be able to communicate our progress, but in fact they are not really precise or they are not real or whatever, then the whole then this is not the idea of OKRs, right? They are detached from all the things that cause you behave like Pavlov's dog just because they are supposed to be, you know, the right thing to do for you and the core unit.
Yeah, I guess where I think MakerDAO might be unique is that in seeking transparency from core units, I think there might be like a pressure for people to share like OKRs in core units and actually use them as a transparency tool and as like a reporting and visibility tool into what core units are working on. So like maybe traditionally it's not used that often, but I think in the context of MakerDAO, it's way more likely that they will be used for that. And people will be judged by their OKRs.
Totally. And doing one step further, I couldn't see why at some point, because what we do, the whole ecosystem is about transparency. So I wouldn't see why we wouldn't actually, in a way, in a public and transparent manner, visualize objectives and key results from different core units in one place, just as a thought experiment. But I think that's exactly what adds to the value of OKRs as part of a framework for the whole ecosystem and not just one organization, because you then have this cross-pollination effect from different core units across, the ecosystem. So definitely.
Yeah, thanks for your answers. Really interesting food for thought.
Thank you, David. All right, do we have any other questions for now?
If you have to go, I don't want to make you answer another question, but I was curious while doing this. Realized I'm pretty bad at coming up with KRs. Very good at coming up with objectives. So I was wondering, like, is there a methodology you can use to like make sure your key results are actually capturing what you're looking for?
Yeah. So most people are, and I remember myself a couple of years ago. I sucked at setting up key results because nothing comes to mind, nothing measurable comes to mind. I mean, I can have a vision, but we need to crunch the numbers in the end. So the best idea always is not to do them alone, right? To actually use the collective brain power of your core unit, your team, people around you, come up with ideas because only the whole system knows what's the best for the whole system. So sitting down and running a brainstorming session on key results will yield key results. There's no other way. And just always remember that whatever is produced in those sessions needs to be measurable. If you have no idea what the key results could be, then basically do not start working. Do not start your quarter because then you will be doing vanity work, pretending that you're actually working on something because you have the objective, while in fact you're not, and you're just wasting time and money. So it's best to put some effort in the beginning and put some time aside to actually set up those objectives and set up those key results. And before you do that, do not go about starting to work on things, because that's going to be pretty random. Okay, any other questions? Because if not, then my last sharing before I say farewell is this slide, which is basically further reading. We're going to, of course, make this presentation public so that you can walk in, and there are links here so you can do the further reading if you're interested in deepening your knowledge on OKRs. And of course, if you're thinking about starting a new core unit, maybe you're working on one already, or a research project that can contribute to the scalable ecosystem of the Maker protocol, feel free to reach out to us. The SES is actually the place to go where you're thinking about something, but you're not entirely sure how to go about all the preliminary stuff. We're there to help. So that was my presentation. Thank you for joining. In case I can leave in the presentation, there's going to be email and there's my Maker Forum handle, I think, in the post. So feel free to reach out and ask more questions about OKRs. I'll be really glad to help.
Thank you, Andy.
So thank you, everyone, and have a really, really good weekend. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.